say no. Pretend the things you did to me. When I got you all gassed up. Changing your opinion on me. Last 2 months. I don't have the time to waste on me. I cried for you. But that just didn't sit right with you. Hey y'all, welcome to my channel. Happy birthday to Drake. I feel like this was a good video for me to do, and don't mind my headphones. I'm not gonna take them off. I'm literally blasting Drake in my headphones, and I kind of have to, because when I'm dealing with these kind of like spiritual topics, I kind of like need to like drown everything out. I can't like focus, and music really focuses me, especially when I'm like tuned into the person's frequency that I'm talking to or about. So yeah, just keep that in mind. I have my mic right here, so the mic is more so for me than you, because I'm recording on my phone. It's just a way for me to hear my voice over the music. So yeah, and I think it looks cool. And I'm snacking because heavy foods keep me grounded while I'm diving into these spiritual like concepts. This is actually a new method for me. I just thought about this today, because of the concept of creating content like this is kind of daunting. But anyways, let's just get into it. So today is Drake's birthday, like as I've already said, and I feel like it's really important to talk about Drake when we're talking about these concepts of spirituality and the state that we're in when we're talking about the music industry and the frequencies that are being pushed out to the masses, right? And I feel like Drake has gotten a really like unfair criticism throughout his whole career. And of course he wouldn't be the only one, but Drake specifically has been labeled as like this pseudo masculine, this simp, this soft guy. And I think there's a very specific purpose behind that. So basically what I believe is that when people are discrediting Drake's ability, it's not because he's a bad rapper, it's because they want to suppress the reemergence of the divine masculine, right? The sovereign king archetype. And I know this might be a new concept, but I really want to start breaking down these archetypes that we are seeing within the music business, because they really do represent something deep and spiritual. Drake is a representation of the Sophia frequency. And if you don't know who Sophia is, she is the divine feminine energy that has been suppressed in religion, right? She is the counterpart of Christ. And Drake, right, this artist who has this deep, vulnerable, and emotional intelligence within his music, and he represents this love for women and the ideology of a sacred union, is something that the old paradigm has been actively trying to suppress for decades. So I want y'all to think about Drake as, you know, a part of the sovereign heart or the wounded healer king archetype when we start talking about, you know, these architectural types that are represented in media, specifically music and hip hop, right? Just to reiterate, that's what Drake represents. But the entirety of the music industry is the Merchant Matrix, right? Where we are pushing the agenda of capitalism in hip hop and other things, right? But specifically what they have been pushing on the Black community lately is capitalism, right? Capitalism through overt sexuality, through drugs, through violence, right? The hustler paradigm or whatever. It's the hyper masculine version of masculinity instead of the more balanced part of it. Because as human beings, women aren't completely feminine, men aren't completely masculine. We're all a blend of this yin and yang energy, right? But in the media, specifically in hip-hop, they want to push this hyper masculine version of a man, and anything that doesn't align with that identity, they try to get rid of. So in my opinion, this is why Drake has been labeled as soft, as a simp. It's not because they don't think that he can rap. It's because they specifically want to suppress this energy from the masses, right? And Drake wouldn't be the first person, right? Think about the 90s and how they existed and who was all in there. We had the Jodeci, 112, Blackstreet, right? We had this extreme and, well, diverse, I should say, not extreme, like this diverse well of Black men who were celebrating the frequency of Black love, chivalry, and emotional vulnerability as strength. And we don't see that anymore. And, you know, there were other people who were doing that around the same time as Drake, like, you know, Chris Brown and Trey Songz. But we also saw the suppression of their artistry as well, right? This was a deliberate shift. This wasn't accidental. We didn't just all of a sudden stop getting male R&B singers, right? What happened to Bryson Tiller? They gave Bryson Tiller one fair shake and we never heard from him again. This is not a coincidence. They are purposely suppressing and shelving Black male artists who represents love and devotion for the feminine energy. It is a systematic dismantling of this archetype of the divine masculine, right? A man who loves, honors, and is devoted to a woman, right? Drake represents that unlikely prophet. And not because he's the only one doing it, but because he's the only one who kept doing it, right? This energy exists in many people, but the people have championed Drake's energy, right? His frequency through his music has been pushed to the masses to the full extent of what we know, right? So Drake's initial rise was not a fluke. It was the reemergence of this energy that has been suppressed for so long. So Far Gone, Heartbreak Drake, Take Care, right? These weren't just albums. These were cultural correctives. He was reintroducing the language of the sovereign heart archetype, right? The soft label was a weapon. His criticism as a soft or dork or simp, they weren't critiques of his talent, but a rejection of that frequency. The matrix attacks what it cannot assimilate. And so if it can't commodify it, it can commodify violence, but it can't commodify genuine, vulnerable sovereignty. So the purpose, right? The purpose of labeling Drake as a simp or a dork or telling him he's not hard enough to actually be considered a good rapper was to give him a I'm literally in between Drake songs and that's why I can't find the word. Like, isn't it crazy? I was on a commercial and I couldn't. Identity crisis. Wow. I'm talking about literally as soon as the song tapped in, I found the word. Like, it's not a joke, y'all. I cannot hear it through the noise. But the purpose of it was to give Drake an identity crisis, right? They wanted him to doubt his own creative greatness, his own creative strategy, right? The goal was make him doubt the power source of the Sophia frequency as a way to be a great artist, right? And seek validation from the very system that was subverting him, right? So what does Drake do? He subverts to creating with artists in Atlanta, like the Migos, Future, 21 Savage. And I like all those projects that Drake does, right? Like The Migos, Versace was great. I love What a Time to Be Loved. It's literally one of my favorite Drake projects. It's like number 5 probably. But I love that one. And I love Her Loss, right? But those were like his walk in the desert moments, right? Where he was attempting to wear the armor of the old paradigm. And I feel like Drake, like, he had albums where he did like a blend of the Sophia frequency and then a blend of the old paradigm. Like, you know, If You're Reading This, It's Too Late. That's probably one of my favorite Drake albums. I think that one more so embodies what the old paradigm represents. But I don't know, that one's still very authentically Drake to me. I love that album. But I do think that was more so like him trying to attempt to prove himself to the old paradigm. But Drake never had anything to prove. If we're being real honest, like, Drake is the GOAT for a reason. So they wanted Drake to feel like he needed to gain acceptance, right? A classic Prophets, Crisis and Faith, right? But when Drake started like re-tapping into his frequency through albums like, I think it kind of started with Scorpion, right? You got songs like I'm So Jaded, songs like that kind of started making the paradigm like look at him again, right? Like, because this was like where Drake was getting all of those, like when Drake was going heavy with Atlanta, that's when they were like, yeah, we're gonna give Drake a Grammy, we're not gonna snub Drake this year, you know what I mean? But when he was trying to do stuff like Views and stuff, they would snub him. Mind you, my timeline a little messed up, but there's a reason that Drake got snubbed for Views. It was literally the epitome of the Sophia frequency. If you ask me, like, Views was Drake's second Take Care. Like, even the way it like lines up to me, it's his second Take Care. It's my second favorite Drake album. But yeah, like, the purpose was to stop Drake from like reconnecting with this frequency. But when he started doing stuff like that, I Will Wait for You, Honestly Never Mind, that's when the paradigm was like, we need to attack Drake again. Then emerges the Kendrick versus Drake beef, right? This wasn't like a coincidence, right? That Drake drops an album like Honestly Never Mind, and then shortly after that, he gets into it with Kendrick Lamar. But honestly, I'm trying to remember, was Honestly Never Mind before the Drake beef? Or was it after? Yeah. So, Honestly Never Mind. And then a couple years later, we get the Drake beef. They don't like what Drake represents in the industry. Women love Drake, right? And it's because Drake is the depiction of this honest, open, masculine energy that we do not see in hip-hop. And because of Drake, Drake opened the door for lots of other artists to have this same like frequency. It's a lot of rappers that we wouldn't have gotten if it wasn't for Drake. But yeah, so the Kendrick Lamar beef was particularly insidious to me because I feel like Kendrick was kind of operating at like a double agent in a way, because he said things to me that if Drake was really listening would be like a code word to try to like reawaken Drake to his divine purpose. And this might be a little like coded for a lot of people, but if you've read Drake's birth chart, which we can go over later, and I can't remember like off rip what his north node is, but I want to be clear when I'm talking about Drake's birth chart, because I feel like that'll really bring clarity to the situation so we can really understand what I'm talking about, understand why this is spiritual and why this is actually a form of spiritual warfare, right? So Drake's south node is in Libra. South nodes represent your past life, right? The trials and tribulations that you act that kind of like trigger you into like behaviors and patterns from things that you failed in your past life. So his south node is in Libra. Comfort, codependency, people pleasing, losing himself in partnership, avoiding conflict. We've seen these behaviors in Drake's. I mean, if you listen to any of Drake's music, you know that he's constantly repeating these behaviors, right? He literally like has built a career about reminiscing about all the women he's poured his life's spirit into, right? So that's like that's like Drake's thing. Like, he has a history of codependency and also like avoiding conflict up until recently. Even the way that Drake does conflict now into this day is like shadowy, you know what I mean? So his north node, which is his your north node, is like your soul's destiny, what you're supposed to do in this lifetime, if you get it right, is in Aries. And his soul's mission is to break free from that and become a healthy, independent, self-assertive pioneer. Okay, what does that mean? Some people might see that and be like, well, that's what Drake's doing right now. He's moving along. He's doing a 20v1. No, that's him acting from his Chiron and Gemini. That's the deep womb from communication, being misunderstood, like intellectual insecurity, and the fear of mental isolation. This is how they have been attacking Drake the entire time, right? First, it was, oh, you're too soft. You're not a real rapper. You're good, but you don't really define hip hop, right? They are actively attacking that Gemini wound to get him to bend and mold to their will. And so that has caused Drake to be like, okay, well then I gotta prove myself. And so he moves along to Atlanta. He tries to work with Atlanta rappers, mold his sound to what they say it means to be a real rapper. But that's him acting, that's not him moving towards his north node, right? So the Chiron wound is no one understands, which is how Drake moves and operates right now. So his north node is Aries, and it's like, I must learn to stand alone, but it doesn't mean being a loner, right? When he's being a loner, that's him acting out of fear and distrust and his inability to collaborate, right? The independence is reactive and isolating. That's not moving in his soul's destiny. A self-directed leader moving in his north node in Aries has the courage to initiate their own vision. Drake was meant to be a visionary, inspire others to follow him, right? And build his own brand. But he's supposed to lead from a place of inner strength and understanding of oneself, right? Not reacting to industry beefs, chart expectations, and blah, 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 blah. That's him still acting in his south node in Aries or his Chiron and Gemini, right? Drake is the architect. He is not meant to follow label blueprints. He is meant to be the visionary behind the labels. Drake is meant to follow his own label and build his own tribe and lead. So that's what I mean when I say Drake's destiny, like this is a soul war, because it's literally in Drake's birth chart to be this person. And they know this because the industry operates on esoteric knowledge. So they are purposely attacking people's natal charts because they know the frequency of their souls. They know how the planets align, right? And if me saying destiny and stuff is like too woohoo spiritual for y'all, just think of it like this. When you were born, the stars were placed where everything has a frequency. We know that the moon controls the tides. If the moon can control the waters of our planet, best believe they can control the frequency of you as a being. Hope that's not too complicated. All right, back to the rest of the video. Drake's north node is for him to be the architect, right? And for him to build a legacy around family and stop being the lone wolf that he is. So what the music industry is attempting to do is to make sure that Drake never reaches this goal and to keep him fighting within himself, not only one, about his identity, but for two, about who he can trust. Like, can he really actually trust someone to build a legacy with? Which is why they, kind of insinuated drama between Nicki and Drake in the first place, right? They want them to not be cool, to not love each other, because they represent that divine union between the divine feminine and the divine masculine, right? In music, in terms of frequency, right? This isn't like, I'm not literally talking about godly prophets coming to change the earth. I'm talking about what their music represents to the frequency for the entire world. Anybody could represent this frequency of divine masculine and feminine. We all embody these qualities. So yeah. So when Kendrick Lamar specifically tried to insinuate that Drake is a pedophile, this accusation is the Matrix ultimate weapon, right? First of all, our government is ran by pedophiles. Pedophilia is what our government runs off of. Like, we run off of child sacrifice. How many kids a year go missing? We know it's a lot. So this is definitely like part of the system that we live in, where they sacrifice children for money, for wealth, for fame. So to include Drake in that is to destroy the image of the nurturing, loving masculine, right? By linking him to the most insidious abuse of innocence, right? It's not an attack on the person, but the archetype itself. It's the same reason why they try to attach Nicki to it as well, right? And like I said, this is not just Drake that this is happening to. It's an attack on the divine masculine as a whole, but Drake is just the very best example of it, right? Because it's been going on for 10 plus years. This happened to Chris Brown. And even though Chris Brown has his flaws, his core brand was built around the frequency of a vulnerable, dancing, loving young man, right? He who is in support of divine feminine energy. So the Matrix amplified his downfall so that they could step on the toes of the divine masculine archetype. Bryson Tiller, Trey Songz. I mean, the list really goes on. What happened to Khalid, right? Khalid's like, anyways, you see what's happening. I'm not even gonna get into that, but you see what's happening to the image. Anyways, yeah. So yeah, you guys, the question is no longer why is it Drake? It's who will be next, right? Which frequency will we collectively choose to continue to amplify? Will it be that of the divine masculine, or that of the Merchant Matrix, the toxic, violent male? Anyways, this is just a little food for thought. Let me know what you guys think of this in the comments, and if you want me to do any more videos like this. But I enjoyed this, and I think that we really need to start thinking about the archetypes that exist within the music industry and what it means for the rest of us, because whether y'all like it or not, music is very spiritual. It is. The frequencies affect our body. We know this. We're always constantly talking about 5G, 4G. We're talking about the TV. We're talking about them being able to manipulate brain waves through the technology that they've created. It's not a game, right? They've already told you what scrolling does to your mind because it's a frequency. So we need to start really like understanding what it is that we're involving ourselves with when we're listening to certain frequencies. I think my next video will be about frequency hijacking on people's birthdays, because the divine masculine Sophia archetype, since they can't stop it, they're trying to commodify it through releasing commercialized romance songs, and it's not working. But yeah, until next time, hope you guys enjoyed.